Michael Saylor is the #1 Bitcoin whale who now owns over 150,000 Bitcoin in a world where most people would be happy just to own one. He proudly states that since adopting a Bitcoin strategy back in 2020, it's pretty much been the best thing anyone could have done, outperforming all other major asset classes. Now, the question is, do we all still have time to build up our own wealth with Bitcoin and crypto, or have we missed the boat? Well, in this video, I'm going to show why anyone can still take advantage from what's coming and why right now it's a very rare opportunity and one that we'll probably never see again. So we'll be covering why Michael Saylor has never been more bullish than he is right now. Then we'll look and analyze his investment strategy and see how this Bitcoin whale is building up his stack. Then why right now is a very rare opportunity and it won't be lasting much longer. And then we'll finish up with Michael Saylor's advice for the smaller retail investor. Okay, so I'm quite proud of this video and I think you're really gonna like it. So let's hear why Michael Saylor, the #1 Bitcoin whale, has never been more bullish than he is right now.
I've never been more bullish. I think that all the indicators are very auspicious. I think there's never been more clarity or differentiation for Bitcoin as the dominant crypto asset than today. That Bitcoin is an asset without an issuer, that it's a global asset, that it is a non-sovereign store of value strategy for someone seeking to escape currency debasement. And I think the fact that Larry Fink, running the world's largest asset manager, vocalized all those ideas on public television of late was a milestone for the space. The statements by Ron DeSantis emphatically supporting your right to Bitcoin, the statements by Robert F. Kennedy emphatically supporting your right to Bitcoin, the large financial companies filing for a spot ETF. I think you could see a market rotation of sentiment over the past 2 years, from one of incredulity to respect, either a grudging respect or this, or I guess this thing is more than we thought it was.
So this is pretty much Michael Saylor's entire Bitcoin strategy and history in one nice chart. And this also is a perfect example of the dollar cost averaging strategy, where you just keep buying at different intervals. You do not try to time the market, you just average your buys out over time. And some of the things to point out here is obviously he's had some amazing buys here, buying probably well below a lot of the people watching here, but then he's also bought really close to the all-time highs. So anyone watching, if you bought at the all-time highs, so did the #1 Bitcoin whale, and don't worry about it. It's about having a longer time frame. And also, has anyone been in the position where you made your purchase and then all of a sudden the price went on to skyrocket and almost doubled and you feel like a god? Well, that's happened, but then on the flip side, has anyone ever made a purchase and then as soon as you bought, the price just crashed on down and kept going down? Well, Michael Saylor's had this as well. He's had the good buys, he's had the terrible buys, and everything in between. And then the other thing to point out is this green line going through here, as this is his average. So when you take into account all of this, the good buys and the not so good buys, then his average is sitting at around about $30,000. So an amazing point is if you buy your Bitcoin right now, just below 30,000, then you would be doing better than Michael Saylor. How cool is that? And then the other thing that he always likes to point out is this, that when he adopted his Bitcoin strategy, August 10th, 2020, it's pretty much the best thing you could ever do, right? And this clearly shows it. MicroStrategy killing it 270%, Bitcoin up 150%, way better than the S&P, way better than the Nasdaq, crushing gold, silver, and bonds. And I'd just like to point out that when it comes to looking at data, you can really manipulate it depending on the time frame and also what you include and what you don't. Prime example here is that this clearly shows that the best thing you could have done was MicroStrategy and Bitcoin, right? Well, let me just add one more piece. And this would be an Ethereum strategy from the same date suddenly changes this whole chart, right? An Ethereum strategy, you'd be up 387%. So it just goes to show that whenever you're looking at data, just check the time frame they are using, because yes, although he's up and Ethereum's up from when he first started, which was August 2020, his entire investment is actually still underwater. It's slightly down from 30,000. So I just thought it's fair to include all the good stuff that Michael Saylor does and has done to the industry. We owe him a lot of debt and gratitude, but also bear in mind that there is other things going on.
I feel like we're at an inflection point. It's a point at which you have the most information to conclude that Bitcoin is a differentiated international asset, store of value, and digital commodity. And yet, the ability of the retail public and the ability of institutions and governments is still largely impaired to act on that. It's very difficult for a retiree with a pension fund to make an investment in Bitcoin. It's very difficult for a large corporation to invest in Bitcoin. It's difficult for a sovereign wealth fund. It's difficult for a government. It's difficult for a hedge fund. When the solutions, when the rails go in place, then there's a huge amount of capital that will flow against a limited supply. So you have, if we look at the demand side, we have a large pool of capital that would love to be in the space, but they can't easily do it without things like Bitcoin securities or spot ETFs. And so that's going to be a big catalyst for demand. Now, on the other side, we have two facts about supply. We know that there will never be more than 21 million Bitcoin. That's the overarching important first order fact. And the second order fact we have is that there's a halving coming that will cut the supply that the miners have available to sell in half, and that's nearly $5 billion a year worth of supply.
And so right now is a very rare opportunity in the crypto space, one that we'll never see again. With Bitcoin, we have these mega investment companies all lined up trying to offer Bitcoin products, but they're getting held back. And this will open the floodgates to institutional investors. So a ton of new demand is coming. Then on the supply side, remember, only ever 21 million, a fixed hard supply. And then we have the halving next year, which cuts new production coming onto the market in half. Now, 2 years from now, people will be looking back at this moment right now and saying you were so lucky to be able to buy your Bitcoin pre-regulation, pre-halving, pre any ETFs, and while Bitcoin was still down over 50% from its all-time high. And this is the reality right now. So not investment advice, but definitely something to think on. Okay, and to finish up, let's get some advice and investment guidance for the average retail investor.
Well, my number one advice is just dollar cost average into Bitcoin. Bitcoin's the apex property. The longer, and then you let time work for you. The longer amount of time you have, then the better off you'll be. The conventional mediocre properties are either high quality real estate or high quality stocks, the S&P index. Everything else is probably going to be a loser, holding cash, holding bonds, holding any other run-of-the-mill stock or whatever. It's just the world is too risky. And in terms of how you accumulate wealth, it's, well, A, you have to work pretty hard at something, whatever it is. You have to be good as a doctor or a dentist or IT professional or whatever. You have to do something to generate cash flow. And then you look to acquire the apex property, using your cash flows or using equity or using debt. The mistakes you make on the investment side are investing in lots of little companies with a 99.9% chance of failure. That's, speculating in tokens, speculating in companies, as we saw in the S&P 500, 95% of them won't perform. Right. So there's a 99% chance you'll fail if you try to trade. There's a 99% chance you'll fail if you try to pick stocks. If you're not going to just be all in Bitcoin maximalist, buy things that human beings and robots can't make more of, and then you'll probably be okay.
So, summing up, with Congress and the media warming up to Bitcoin, a string of Bitcoin ETFs coming, new accounting rules coming, politicians buying and endorsing Bitcoin, it's no wonder Michael Saylor has never been more bullish. Right now is a very rare opportunity as we don't have the regulation and Bitcoin products that's going to bring massive amounts of new demand. And from the supply side, remember, only ever 21 million and a halving coming next year, which cuts the new supply in half. And this will likely lead to a massive price shock. And amazingly, if you were to buy your Bitcoin right now, then you'd be getting it at a better average price than the #1 Bitcoin whale himself, Michael Saylor. And finally, his advice for the average retail investor is simply just dollar cost average into the apex property, Bitcoin, and then wait. And you'll beat 99% of the other people who are trying to trade and pick the small cap winners. So there you are, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Now tell me, what do you think about Michael Saylor's advice? Let me know below. But just remember, we are trying out the new SuperThanks commenting system. In order to get rid of 100% of the trading bots and scams that plague the YouTube comments, if you want your question or comment read and replied to, have a query, suggestion, or just to say thanks, then use SuperThanks below. And for now, just to say, if you did enjoy anything in the video, then drop a like, and a big thank you to everyone who does, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.